All right. Good morning here from the East Coast. You might be wondering why we scheduled at this time. That's because we have a global audience, and David and I were trying to figure out the right time that would work for as many people as possible. And so, happy Sunday morning from the East Coast of the U.S. to all of you, wherever you are. I'm delighted to be doing this with all of you. I've had so much request to do a live Q&A with you guys, and instead of focusing on one thing, to just take all of your questions and answer them to the best of my ability if I can. So let's get going. So the first question we have is, how do I overcome the yips in chipping? So that's a good question, Michael, and you'll be surprised that people have the yips not just in golf, but in almost every sport that requires some amount of muscle coordination, whether it's tennis or soccer, or there is something that happens from a neuromuscular perspective that causes you to sort of jerk, if you would. I think the first thing is to understand what exactly the yips is and to identify the root cause of it. So the first question that I would have you answer is, are the yips happening just in chipping, or are they happening in all of your shots? And then secondly, are they happening in life in general? So sometimes people have the yips with their right hand or right arm. Sometimes it's with the left hand or left arm. And so I always start by asking, where is it happening? Is it happening on all shots? Is it happening off the golf course also, maybe when you're grabbing a cup of coffee or a drink? If it is not happening off the course, then that's a very good thing. That means that this is more anxiety related than it is something neuromuscular, where I would have you go see a medical doctor to examine what's going on. Maybe there's something in the communication of your nerves. Um, but I'm going to assume that, since you've just said chipping, that it's exclusively to chipping. Otherwise, you would have said everything else. So that evidence that it's happening in one type of situation, you should view that, okay, well, what is it about this situation that is causing that? So that's number one. Number two is to understand that the muscles are just slaves to the brain. Muscles do not make any decisions on their own. Muscles do not have memory. So the best example I can give you is, think of a quadriplegic. A quadriplegic, their brain works fantastic, their muscles work great. There's some type of a spinal injury that causes the communication between the brain and the muscles to be injured, and therefore they're unable to move anything typically below their neck. So that is proof point that whatever the muscles do, it's not random. It's coming from the brain. Okay, so if you are yipping at anything, whether it's putting or chipping or a driver or certain type of iron shot, maybe a cut or a draw or a certain club that you have, that means that those neurons, which think of a neuron as a car that has all in the trunk of the car and in the passenger seat of the car, all of the necessary skills that you have to execute that shot are in that specific car. That means that that car that is going to your muscles to do whatever you want to do, in this case, chipping, that there are some baggage in that car. And that baggage typically is, some type of a trauma. Now, typically, when people think of trauma, they think rightfully that maybe somebody passed away, or you had a big injury, or something more life related. And true, like maybe going to war or those kinds of things. That is true. Those are typical and somewhat obvious sources of trauma. But what trauma does is that it makes the car very heavily weighted with a lot of baggage. So it makes it hard for that car to go to your muscles in the right way, in the right frequency, so that you can do what you're capable of doing. So when people are yipping, whether it's putting or chipping or anything really, it just means that there is a memory that is inside that car that is essentially, for all practical purposes, vibrating at a different frequency than the rest of the skills. That's all that is. So I think understanding the problem is a big part of coming up with the solution. And I gave you probably the most simplistic way to understand, as a golfer, as a lay golfer, what yipping is. The number of people that have come to see me for yipping, I must admit, mostly are putting. And I explained this to them. And I would say that almost all of them leave, at best, obviously getting fixed, or worst case scenario, they at least understand what to do. So I think that the process, your pre-shot routine in your chipping, it then becomes the most important part. Okay, in that 45 seconds, 60 seconds, 1 minute, or if you're waiting to chip, if you can flood your brain with the right passengers in that car, then that will reduce the probability that the yips are going to come up. So I recommend that you take a card, and I have these cards that I give out, but it can be something as simple as this. It can be, you can make your own, right? It's just a card with some boxes on it. But in that card, I might have you, while you're practicing, is to try to think of, at least 5 or 6 very good chips that you have hit, and the most recent ones. And just write it there. It might be hole number 2 at a certain club last week. It might be hole number 8 yesterday when I was practicing, or it might be this, it might be that. And so in your pre-shot routine, begin to feed your brain, just like if you're eating something or drinking something, you're feeding your body nutritionally or hydrationally. Feed your brain cognitively those memories, so that that's the memory that is going to try to be in that car that's going to your muscles to hit that chip. So I would say use those 45 seconds to 60 seconds in your pre-shot routine to flood your brain. Again, not with the general positivity. That's another sort of fallacy, is don't say, oh, I'm going to make it, or I'm a good person. Those are good positive thoughts. There's nothing wrong with that. But I'm saying those thoughts are not going to be traveling in that car because of your trauma. So fill your brain with most recent similar executed shots, so it's easy for your brain to remember that. Then, as you get over the ball, there's one king, and I want you to serve this king. That king becomes your master, and that king is your target. Whatever your target is. Now, for chipping, I've worked with enough people to know that people have different targets. Sometimes it's a landing spot. Sometimes it's where you want the ball to finish. Sometimes it's what you want to do with the ball. You want to put some cut spin on it or draw spin on it, or you want to hit a certain trajectory. But whatever that is, make that the most dominant thought and grab onto that target in the same way that if you give a bone to a dog and then you try to take that bone away, you can't. You put both your hands on that bone and you try to pull it from the jar, and they're just not going to let go of that bone. So in that same way, you grab onto whatever target it is that you've decided after you've done a good job of your pre-shot routine, and you just allow your body to hit that shot to that target, whatever that target is. So I took a few minutes to sort of answer that question, because even though you asked about chipping, this applies to anything. It applies to putting, it applies to all those kinds of things. But again, the 3-step process is understand the real problem. The real problem is not that you need to go get a new putter or change your putting stroke or a new wedge or change your stroke or grip. I see so many people changing their grips and changing, their technique and those kinds of things. And I see a lot of placebo effect, meaning it works, but it works for maybe 1 round or 2, and then it's back. So understand what the real problem is, which is that there is baggage in the car. The car is the neuron that has the memory of your skill, of what to do with the muscles so you can hit the shot the way that you want to or are capable of. Use your pre-shot routine effectively, flood your brain with most effective recent similar shots, not random shots, and then grab onto our target and do not let it go. All right, so next question I have is, I hope that was helpful to you. Next question I have is, what are some target holding drills or exercises that I can practice? So this is a really good question, probably one of my favorite questions. So, just remember, and this is a very, very important point. This might be the most important point that I can share with all of you. And that is that just remember that taking the target and holding the target, number one, are not the same thing. And number two, they're not the same skill. I can give you so many examples, but I'll give you an example of a tour player. So again, one of the best players in the entire world that came to see me. And I watched his pre-shot routine, and his pre-shot routine was immaculate. He went behind the ball and looked from the ball to the hole. He went behind the hole and looked at, the line from the hole to the ball. He went on the low side. His eyes were locked in. I mean, his 45 seconds in terms of taking the target were brilliant. He did a great job of saying, this is what this putt is going to do. And again, I'm just using putting, but you can use this to any shot in terms of holding the target. Then he went over the ball, and I had my brain trackman on him. And I realized very quickly, as soon as he got over the ball, he lost the target. And I can tell that he's lost the target because of the frequency that the sensory cortex travel on. They began to spike. In other words, all this amazing time that he spent, analyzing the putt and the read was completely lost, because when he got over the ball, it was lost. And so now it's almost like he's hitting the putt as though he's blind. I'm exaggerating a little bit, but only to make a point. And then he would look again, get it back, and then he would lose that. So just first of all, remember that that is a different skill. And the overwhelming majority, if not all, of the target part of golf is spent on taking the target versus holding the target. In the long game, taking the target, to be honest with you, is easy. I mean, if you're on a tee box, it's so obvious where the fairway is, or where the bunker is, or the hazard is where you want to not go or move away from. Like, it's right there. Like, there's not much skill involved with that. And sometimes that can cause you to be lazy with taking the targets because it's kind of so obvious. Same thing on your approach shot. You're looking at a green. I mean, it's a big green. It's a panoramic screen that your eyes are looking at. It's right there. There's a green and there's a flag and a pin there. And it's so obvious, and the flag is standing out, and it's so obvious, and it's, oh, okay, I want to hit it there. But you've not been very good with the there. So this is where holding the target, to me, is much more important. And the discipline that it takes to not hit a golf shot without the target in your mind is so important. I know I haven't answered the question yet, but I'm still making the point over here, and allow me to make one more point. At the end of the day, if I can convince you to change how you think about the game of golf from maybe a swing sport or an equipment sport, which is what it is, to a target sport. The objective of the game of golf is to send the ball there, wherever there is, in the fairway, on the green, to a hole. That is the target sport. Now, what makes golf the most difficult of all target sports is that your eyes are not on the target when you're hitting it. Therefore, holding the target becomes the most important part. I have found when the target is in your head, when you're holding the target in your head, it's not that you will hit a perfect shot, but the dispersion of your shot will be very small, because those cards that are going to your muscles, they know what to tell the muscles, if you would. So even your mishits or your poor swings, even though you're distracted, if there's a target playing in your head, then most of the sequencing and the force that you're applying on the ball will be correct, if not all of it. Now, given that context, how do you hold the target? Right? So one of the things that I ask people to do, and I'm going to do it here with you. So all of you that are there, I want you to close your eyes. This will take about 30 seconds. Just close your eyes. And I want you to think of the car that you have. And if you don't have a car, think of a car that you see all the time that you really like. Now, I'm going to give you about 15 seconds. I want you to describe that car in your own mind to yourself. Go ahead. Try to see different features in the car, different colors. Okay, you may open your eyes. Okay, so I will tell you that what you just did is the most important skill in golf. I know many people will laugh at me. People throw things at me when I said that. I'm like, are you kidding me? No, it's the golf swing, it's the equipment, it's the ball, it's my technique, it's this. And yes, those are all important variables. But again, if I am telling you that human beings are incredibly sophisticated creatures, our brain is the most powerful phenomenon in the entire world. If we give it a target, it will make the body do something, whatever it needs to do to orchestrate that. Clearly, with better technique, you can do that better. With better equipment, you can do that better. But that's the most important skill. So if you can look down at the ball, because when you're hitting the ball, whatever shot you have, a driver, an iron, a putter, a chip, you're looking down at the ball. You're not looking there outside at the target. If you can look down at the ball and describe your target in the same way that you just described your car to yourself, that is holding the target. So think about anything there, again, if you're on the tee box, maybe it's, and again, I don't know how you describe your car. Maybe you're describing the seat or the color or the wheels or the steering wheel or whatever it is. You know how you closed your eyes and you were thinking about it? That's holding the target. And so some version of that, which you just demonstrated you can do, I'm assuming none of you are in your car. So you are not even looking at what I asked you to think of. But that is the way that you can hold the target. So when you take the target, try to find things in there that you feel like when you turn your head back down and look at the ball, you can remember it most easily and you can describe it in the same way that you just described your car a couple of minutes ago. All right, let's move on to other questions. Okay, so question is, when you start working with a golfer, do you use some sort of evaluation? And what tools do you use for that? Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I have the luxury of having the Brain TrackMan, but there are many things that if you don't have that you can do. So one of the things that I ask people is, what do you feel is holding you back in your game of golf? Just ask them and just listen for the answer. I think you will find if you're a coach, invariably, it's not that they don't have particular shots. Nobody says, oh, I only hit draws and man, if I could hit fades, I would score really well. Nobody says, oh, I only hit the ball 250 yards. If I could hit it 270 yards, oh, I could score very well. I'm sure there's some truth to that, but I never hear that when I ask that question. Usually the answer that I get, and I'm sure if you've asked that question or if you're answering that question for yourself, it'll be, man, I just make too many mistakes, or I lose focus, or I'm underperforming, or I can do it on the range, I cannot do it, in a tournament round, or I can do it in my practice round, but I cannot do it in my real round when it matters. So I think starting with that question will reveal to you a lot about how they think, what the problem is. Another question to ask is, well, describe, a hole or a round where you did that, meaning where you felt that you underperformed. and listen to that. Just quietly listen, take some notes, and have them describe maybe a bogey that they made. Usually, not always, people will talk about either missing short putts or not getting up and down, or they go bogey, bogey, bogey in a row, or a bad shot that they're not able to recover from, or those kinds of things. And so that to me creates again the door for you to then begin to explore. I also do other assessments, like I have a brain assessment. It's called an EQ assessment that will help me look into, and this is an online assessment. It takes about 10 minutes to sort of take, but it gives me a clue into where their self-awareness is, how are they able to regulate themselves, i.e. change themselves. Um, and then another thing is, and frankly, this is the best way. The best way is to go watch them play. If you're a golf instructor, and again, I don't know if some of you are, but and I have so many good friends, like personal friends that are golf instructors. I think golf is one of the very few sports, and forgive me for saying this, this is not a judgment, this is an observation. I am not judging. But golf instruction is one of the very few of all sports where the instructor is not actually watching you play. Most golf instruction is happening on the range or in a studio somewhere. Not all of it, again, and not all the time, but more often than not. And I'm telling you that that is not where the game is played. And most golf instruction, again, not all of it, is centered around the swing, and obviously, a smaller amount on short game. But as a golf instructor, I know this does not fit a business model. It's much easier to have 1 hour, because 1 hour fits into the time, and you can charge for 1 hour. But 1 hour is not a learning model. There is no study that I have seen that says 1 hour is the right amount of time to learn anything. So if you're a coach, I think one of the things that you can do, and you can work out some type of an arrangement with your player, but go watch them play. You will see so much. What do they do, on the tee box before they hit a shot? What do they do after they hit a good shot? What do they do after they hit a bad shot? What do they do when they're in trouble? What are they doing when they're waiting for their turn to putt? What does their routine look like? How fast are they talking or walking? How slow are they walking or talking? How disciplined are they about their pre-shot routine, whatever it may be? Are they good in the early part of the round and struggle in the middle and come back at the end, or do they struggle at the end or struggle in the middle? There's so much that you can learn. So much. The volume of information that you will get by watching any one of your players while they are playing is, to me, the best assessment that you can have. And I encourage you to change your model if you have a new client, a new golfer that comes to see you if you're a coach, or if you are a golfer and you want instruction, ask your coach to come watch you play. Play a real round. Again, not play with you. I'm saying observe you. Right? So you go sit in a golf cart and watch them, or take a backpack, take your camera with you, and you stay on the cart path and just watch them play from afar. Just watch them play 9 holes. Give them a target. Okay, you shoot even par, you win the tournament. You shoot 3 under, you win, or give them some type of a goal and just watch them play. And I know that that's a long time. It's 4 hours, 5 hours, but that's where the real magic happens. All right, good question. Let's keep going here. Another good question. Many golfers refer that they lose their rhythm of the swing, and how would you address that? Again, part of the magic of neuroscience, very similar to, say the TrackMan or these devices that we have now, these launch monitor devices. What these launch monitors, again, probably 14 years old now, did was they revolutionized both the game as well as the instruction as well as the learning. By hitting 10 swings with a launch monitor, you can get all the information that you want that your naked eyes cannot see. You can say, oh, where is my club path? Where is my club face? What's my launch angle? What's my RPMs? And so on and so forth. Information, frankly, that I'm not even remotely qualified to process because I'm not a golf instructor. Now, but what that does, the power of that information is that it takes a lot of guessing out of the equation. In my opinion, one of the reasons why, and there are many, but one of the main reasons, if not the biggest reason, other than equipment maybe, that so many players are now, highly competitive at a much younger age than even a generation ago, is because of this information. Certainly equipment and fitness and, my goodness, so many other things, instruction, quality of instruction is all infinitely better as well. But it's largely that we have eliminated lots of guesswork because we have studied it better. We have video cameras now. We can see things that the naked eye cannot see in a split second. Now, you may say, well, you're not answering the question. The question is, why do golfers lose their rhythm? The reason I'm giving you that long answer is because via the Brain TrackMan, I am able to see when someone loses their rhythm. And this is the same thing as their tempo. So rhythm and tempo, these are not real things per se. And by real thing, I mean, something that is real is your liver, it's your kidney, is your bicep, is your tricep, it's your knee, it's your hip. These are very real, body organs, muscles, tendons, sequencings that are involved. Rhythm and tempo are terms that we came up with to basically, when the naked eye is looking at something, we know, oh, it doesn't look like it's rushed. It doesn't look fast. It looks like something is being coordinated in the right way, in the right sequencing, in the right timing. That's the term that we have given rhythm and tempo. I have a friend who does radio analysis, TV analysis on the PGA Tour, and they follow the last 2 or 3 groups. So the groups that are in the lead. And one of the things that he tells me that, he notices in the lead group with the player that wins is that their rhythm or their tempo is really good. But again, that's, in my opinion, it's either not something that necessarily you can teach directly because, I know people practice that using a metronome or some type of a device. What I have observed, and again, through my Brain TrackMan, is that the best way of having whatever rhythm or tempo is yours is to have a good target being held in your head. I have amazingly, especially with putting or swings, I have found that if the target is in your head, magically the right tempo shows up or the right rhythm shows up. In other words, what I'm telling you is that rhythm and tempo is not something that you consciously go after. It is the byproduct of having a target that is being held in your head. If a target is not in your head and you're not holding it, in other words, you've lost the target, that creates those cars are now confused. Where am I going again? Where am I hitting this? Do I have to hit hard? Do I have to hit it slow? And that's when your rhythm goes off. So I am simplifying things, again, only for the purpose of this webinar. The neuroscience behind all of this is a little bit complicated, but nonetheless, that's probably the most simplistic way that I can explain rhythm and tempo. I agree with the observation that people who are playing very well have good rhythm and tempo, but to be honest with you, I don't think of it that way. I think people that are playing well are holding good targets. in their brain, it's very clear. The way that you described your car, it's very clear. All right, next question from Stephen. I have trouble reading putts, so I often pick and hold the target like a spot on the right cup, but it's the wrong target. Okay, so that's another very, very, very good question, Stephen, and thank you for asking that. It's probably one of my favorite questions. I did a whole session on this with Carl Morris, who's a very good friend of mine. We have a putting product that's on his website. And if you go to his website, I think it's themindfactor.com. That product is there. But in that product, we talk at length about different targets. So let me tell you several things about putting first. You are never going to have the same target in putting in a round of golf. Let me repeat that. You are never going to have the same target in putting in a round of golf. Therefore, it is to your detriment to only have one type of target. So what do I mean by that? So first of all, let's take soccer. In soccer, there are two goals on either end of the field. Those goals don't change and you're on the same field. Let's take basketball. You're on the same basketball court and the hoops are the same. Pick any sport. Golf is over several hundred acres of land. Each green complex is different. The pin position each day is going to be different. The pin position will say, oh, maybe it's left to right, right to left. It all depends on where you land your ball. The grain is going to be different. Maybe the shadow on that day from the sun is reflecting differently on the green. So the targets for putting are always going to be different. They're not going to be the same. So I encourage you, first of all, to not become a slave to one type of target. Don't practice, oh, left cup or right cup or linear putting or die putting or firm putting. Depending on the putt, you may have to die it in. Depending on another putt, you may have to firm it in. Depending on one putt, there's an old pitch mark just below, short of the hole, where your ball has to go over, and therefore that pitch mark becomes your target because it just stands out. But again, to me, the first part is, do not become a slave to one type of putting. So one of the best ways to practice this is to go to your practice green and with one ball, only one ball, and put one ball 3 feet away to one cup and say, okay, on this putt, which is the best target for me to hold? Is it the back of the cup? Is it the sound of the ball dropping? Depending on where you put the ball, is it an old pitch mark? It is a little shiny grain somewhere. Is it an entry point? When you make that putt, pick up your ball, go to a different hole with that one ball, put it at a different, location. Maybe it's 5 foot from above the hole. Pick it up and go do it somewhere else. That to me is more similar practice putting than what you're about to go do. When you go play golf, that's what putting is going to be. You're never going to have the same putt. Even if your first 3 holes, you have 5 foot, the distance of the putt is 5 feet. On the first hole, it could be a left to right 5 feet. On the second hole, it could be a right to left 5 feet. On the third hole, it could be the same left to right putt as you had on the last hole. But on this one, there's a tall tree and the shadow of the tree creates a nice little, target for you to hold. So I encourage you is to train your mind to what it loves to do, right? Training your mind to what you like to do, which is, to process, okay, in this situation, what can I do? All right, I'm going to have fun finding on any putt which target I'm going to hold on this putt, as opposed to going into the green saying, okay, this is my barrier, this is my limitation. I'm a die putter, so I have to find how I can die this putt in. That's a prison. That's a mental prison. You have limited yourself to the options available to you when you only think one way of putting. So expose yourself. And by the way, you can do the same thing on your long game. Enjoy standing on a tee box, looking at it and say, okay, look at this. I have trees, I have clouds, I have bunkers, I have undulations, I have a hill, I have a mound. That's fun. Is that not fun to observe that in nature? And say, okay, out of all those things that my eyes are being gifted, which one do I like? Ah, I like that dead tree over there. I'm going to hit it there. I mean, you've just converted the game of golf into something fun, into something enjoyable, as opposed to, oh, okay, I better not hit it there. I better not hit it there. I got to hit it over there. So our senses, our sensory cortex is where a lot of our, ability to stay present comes from, and ability to enjoyment really comes from enjoying where you are now. All right, next question. I think we have time for about 3 or 4 more. The next question that we have is, what is the difference between a pre-shot routine and a pre-shot process? I love this question. And again, I'm really glad that we're doing this on video, because if I were doing this in person, when I say what I'm about to say, some of you would throw something at me because you would not believe me, because it's so counterintuitive. I am not a fan of a pre-shot routine. I know this goes against everything that you've ever heard. People say, oh, a pre-shot routine creates, the same technique. You're doing the same thing. That may have worked, 10, 15 years ago, but I have found, looking into the human brain during a pre-shot routine, that once your brain knows what it wants to do, if you continue that routine, then you're actually opening up your brain to mind wandering. Every 3 to 10 seconds, because you're a human being, not because you're flawed, your brain is going to wander. This is the human condition that we all live in now. Our brains are saturated with too much stimuli. Through the lives that we live, through our phones and our devices, our brains are consuming a lot of stimuli. Well, those stimuli have to go live somewhere. Well, they live in our brain. That creates noise, and that creates distraction. You may have seen something 2 days ago or 3 days ago, and you're sitting in a car somewhere, and suddenly your brain starts thinking about that. You would have never thought of that if you hadn't consumed it, yesterday or the day before. And remember, your brain is also the place where it will connect whatever you consumed 3 days ago to 3 years ago to what's happening right now. So instead, I'm a fan of a pre-shot process. So I encourage you to let go of a pre-shot routine, which is I'm doing the identical thing. People applaud. They say, oh, well, if you time Jack Nicklaus, if you time Tiger Woods, it's exactly 42 seconds. It's exactly 45 seconds. So what? That worked for them at that time. For most of us, again, if in the first 10 seconds you see exactly what this putt is going to do or this shot is needed, and then you keep going through your routine, your brain already knows it's done its job. Now you're just doing it for the sake of doing it. Now you've opened up your brain to mind wander. And then when you go over the ball, the odds that you will then lose the target goes up. So what is the pre-shot process? It's very simple. Take a holdable target and then hold it. Do not be a slave to time. If that takes 3 seconds to take it and hold it, then take 3 seconds. If it takes 10 seconds, take 10 seconds. If it takes 40 seconds because there's a lot going on with this putt, it's a long putt or this, that, or you're looking at the green on the approach shot, take your 45 seconds. But the eyes is very powerful. Don't underestimate the power of the eyes to communicate to those cars what they need to do so that they can take that information to the muscles. You don't have to look at something 20 times. I mean, the fairways are wide, the green is big, the hole, yes, is small. I I admit that. But at the same time, you know, allow your eyes to quickly say, okay, this is what the shot requires, this is what I want to do. And so that's taking it and then hold it. It's more simpler to say, I'm going to take the target and hold it however long it takes. Now you have let go of another prison, the prison of time and the prison of routine. These are cognitive prisons that for no reason we're putting ourselves into. Why? Because someone else said so? That's not a good enough reason. Again, golf is a target sport. It is not a swing sport. It is not a pre-shot routine sport. I mean, arguably, and I may be wrong, but I don't think I am. You know, the only person on the PGA Tour, or frankly in professional golf, again, I may be wrong, so please don't call me out on this, but the only person in professional golf to break 60 in a tournament twice is Jim Furyk. And he has a swing that I think every person in this world would change. Again, I'm not judging his swing. I'm saying good for him. My guess is that Jim Furyk does. I don't know him. I've never spoken to him in my life, but my guess is that he's just worried about doing whatever his body, whatever he's trained to do. In other words, whatever is in his cars, those neurons, to send the ball wherever he wants to send it. How many people have you played with, and you look at them and you say, "My swing is so much better than them," but they're beating you by 4 strokes, by 5 strokes? You look at their putter and their putting stroke, and it's the goofiest thing that you've ever seen, but they're making putts. I like those people. Those are my tribe, because I know in their mind, they're just saying, I want to send that ball there. And they don't care what you think about their putter or their stroke or their swing. You think they care? No. Now, they may not understand what they're doing, but I promise you, if I were to look in those people's brain, I see very, very good frequencies of their senses, and that's all it is. So I think both as a golfer and as a golf instructor, you know, again, we may have made this game far more complicated than it is. It's an outdoor sports in nature where you're just trying to send the ball there. Create space in your brain so that the target, can be held. And then whatever skill level you have, let that skill level come up. The more swing thoughts you have, the more judgment you have. Again, those are all baggage in those cars going to those muscles. All right. So I'll take a break over here to give a shout off to our sponsors. Obviously, I am joking here, but please remember that golf is a target sport. Our website is jiragolf.com, www.gyra.com. I have several books out there. There are many podcasts out there. And also, I wanted to let all of you know that we have a new program out there in program number 1. So if you go to our website, we just are announcing today for the first time that we have a 30-minute online course that you can take. In this course, 30 minutes online in 5 modules, you will learn all about the brain. You will learn about those cars that I was telling you about. You will learn about these things called the neurohacks. A neurohack is something that you can do in your pre-shot process, between shots, while you're waiting, to get your brain more clear so that you can have the right cars in your brain. So we call it getting to green. And that way you can hold targets. Also, if you are an instructor or a coach, you can become JIRA certified by me. I noticed Marina is here. She was certified by me, and she can attest to it. But it's a pretty intense course, but almost everybody that has gone through it, if not everybody, has learned a lot, has changed the way that they teach golf, that they play golf. But I encourage you to consider becoming JIRA certified if you're a coach or an instructor. it will really help you take the knowledge that you have. We honor the experience that you bring, and this course is designed to complement your existing skills. All right, let's get back to maybe one or two more questions over here. Okay. Is it more important to change putting stroke or to change the thoughts? Great question. So I will tell you that, and I've had this debate not just with putting stroke, because that's a technical thing. You take your putter backwards and you go forwards, and then there's a routine, but also with, let's say, wedge play or short game play or your iron shots or hitting fades or draws or ultimately your long game. I don't ever want to be misquoted. So what I will tell you is that there is, without any doubt, a role for technique in all of these shots. If your awareness of how to hit a certain shot, most dominantly to have your club path and your club face in the manner that you want it on plane, and to have your body sequencing, whether it's how you rotate, how you weight transfer, how to use your left side or right side, all these variables, your equipment, your shaft, your length, the way you grip something, all of these are very important variables for golf. And the reason we have tend to, in my opinion, unjustifiably focused on them is because these are things that you can see. If someone goes on their backswing and they're completely laid off, well, you can see they're laid off. If they're coming out to in, well, you can see they're out to in. If someone has a strong grip, well, you can see they have a strong grip or a weak grip. Or if someone is popping, if they're hitting the ball while they're putting, you can see it. Or if they're chunked it, you can see, oh, they came, behind the ball. Oh, they sculled it. These are things that you can see. And what I'm telling you is, I find that to be a smaller part of the problem and therefore a smaller solution to the problem. Now, what do you not see? Do you see what someone is in someone's mind when they're over the ball? Do you know that when they're over the ball, their mindset, well, don't go left, don't go right? Do you see that in their mind, they just thought, oh, I just made bogey, I better do something right here? Or my dad is watching, or my mom is watching, or my coach is watching, or my whatever the case may be. Oh, I'm 5 over now, I'm going to miss the cut, or I'm going to play poorly. Do you see those? No. Yet I will tell you that those kinds of thoughts is overwhelmingly the biggest share of the cause of not hitting shots that you're capable of. And so it's a good question, Michael, that you're asking, is what do I fix? And to me, it starts with fix the root cause. And I'll give you another example. And this is not just with golf, but with life. So let me give you this example, and maybe we can end with this. It's a wonderful example. When I speak publicly, I share this example all the time. I want you to imagine that you have a beautiful cabin, and this cabin is on a wonderful small river that just flows. And every morning you wake up with a cup of coffee or a chai or whatever it is, your beverage of choice, and you go sit on your deck. You see the nice water coming down, and you really enjoy it. But every morning there's a trash bag. There's a bag of trash that comes, and it gets stuck right there in front of you, in front of your cabin, every morning. And you just walk up there every morning, you pick up that bag of trash, and you put it in the trash can in your house. And you enjoy the rest of the morning and the rest of the day. That is a solution to the problem, correct? Yes. Now, do you not think that the better solution is, where is this trash even coming from? Why don't I just walk upstream and let me just fix where it's coming from? Maybe someone is putting it somewhere where they don't know that it's going into the river. Is that not a better solution? Both of those are solutions, but one, I'm going to where it starts. So what I'm trying to tell you, that where everything starts, not just in golf, but in life, if you go upstream, is our brain. It's our thoughts. And so, I think all of us human beings, by virtue of being human beings, not by being flawed, by virtue of being human, just trying to live in the world that we live in today, to not have awareness of how the brain works is leaving a lot of your performance to chance. And I will go as far as saying it's not just your performance, because your performance is just a small part of your life, but your life, the quality of your life. It's no different than if you're sitting down with a bunch of friends and drinking coffee and in a nice, coffee shop, but your brain is thinking about all of the problems of yesterday and all of the problems of tomorrow. That's the same thing as being over a golf shot and you're thinking about the problems you had in the last few holes and what you have to do in the next few holes. Same thing. How is that different? So the skills that you can learn to quiet your mind over a golf shot so that you can hit the ball with the target in your mind is the same skill that you have if you really want to enjoy that beautiful cup of coffee or the conversation that you're having with your friend. It's the same skill because it's the same brain. So I encourage all of you to, again, invest in information that comes from me, people like me, people are focused more on the neuroscience of performance. There's so much more information that we're discovering every single day. And all right. So thank you, all of you. I appreciate your spending your Sunday morning or wherever you are in the world. Marina, I know that you're in Europe. So have a wonderful Sunday afternoon over there. And thank you for making time. And again, please go to our website, www.jiragolf.com. There's a new program there. And if you're an instructor and interested in going through the JIRA certification process, I only do about 4 of these a year, so I don't do them very often, but would love to have you in some of the classes next year. All right. Stay green, everybody.